professional. That's what I like to do on this show.
I always give them a little taste of that next few bars.
Yep, that's the fun. Wow, these headphones are on high. All right, there we go. That threw me off a little. All right, so welcome to Cinema Smackdown on CJLS 1690 AM. My name is Michael Brodie. I'm joined this week by Shane Simmons, our occasional guest.
I'm hardly ever here anymore.
You're hardly ever here anymore. And we are here this week. I'm not quite sure what we're going to be doing. All I know is my suggestion of World War I movies was rejected. So
not true.
No?
No, I mean,
so
well,
we're doing World War I movies?
No,
Thank
not
goodness.
today.
I did prepare for this.
No, but yes, I do have plans to see 1917 immediately after the show.
All right.
And then perhaps we will get on to one of my favorite topics.
Okay.
The tiny genre that is World War I movies.
Actually, I managed to find quite a few of them in my search.
Yeah, well, compare that to World War II movies, and you'll see a bit of a gulf.
No, there's no comparison. But there's plenty, and I am looking forward to debating some of them with you, especially 1917.
Okay.
that'll be the right one.
I know you're such a big Sam Mendes fan.
But I like being surprised. Shane, tell us what our subject is for today.
Well, today we're going to try and solve a murder mystery.
Alrighty.
It is an episode...
Is it a Rian Johnson level murder mystery?
It kind of is, and he may be a lead suspect. The subject is Who Killed Star Wars?
Oh!
Or my alternate title, Star Wars, An Autopsy.
Right. That's exciting.
Because as we know, Rise of Skywalker has finally crawled across the billion-dollar global take finish line, which took it much longer than all the other films. And ultimately, the calculation is that it left about $2 billion on the table. That had this recent trilogy played out correctly, had Disney not mishandled the intellectual property, that is Star Wars, that they paid over $4 billion for, that this climactic part of the Skywalker, the so-called Skywalker saga, should have done at least Avengers Endgame money. And, probably should have done the $3 billion mark. But of course...
I'm sorry, I hate to break in, but should have done as much or more than the movie that made the most money of all time in a trilogy that people are middling on.
Well, exactly. That's the whole point. The trilogy managed to so alienate and disinterest fans that by the end of it, no one cared anymore. Because once Disney took over Star Wars, a good number of years ago now, for the exorbitant price, and even Disney thought they overpaid for this.
No, they did not.
Well, they didn't, but it was higher. It was considerably higher than the paper pushers would have evaluated it as. Sure. The fact that they paid a token amount over $4 billion.
To be clear, they're going to make more than $4 billion this year on Baby Yoda stuffies.
Well, again, this is another mismanaged thing because that should have most certainly been on shelves for Christmas.
No, that wasn't mismanaged. That was deciding to not overspoil ahead of time.
There's spoiling and then there's making the money.
I feel like while there may have been some money lost in this last Christmas season's choice of not releasing that toy ahead of time, it won't matter in the long run. This is literally the biggest single item of the year that people want.
You need to sell the hotcakes while they are fresh.
I feel like whatever they lost, they're going to get back
Keep
by
in
the
mind,
beginning of season 2.
Keep in mind, this is Disney. They're Apple-level evil. If Apple has slave labor factories in China, so can Disney. Mm-hmm. So, you can have your compound of slave labor turning out to Baby Yodas, and you don't even need a non-disclosure agreement for that. You just keep them in the compound.
Works for me, but I feel like they are going to make $1 billion minimum off that character.
But once again, it could have been so much more.
Yeah, but all right, is that your argument today, that it's always going to be it could have been more despite being a massive success?
No.
I'm just trying to understand your end game here.
Well, the end game is that Star Wars was sort of an accidental success back in 1977.
Mm-hmm.
No one expected much from this Buck Rogers throwback science fiction adventure thing, which is one of the reasons why Lucas walked away with all the merchandising rights, because no one thought there was going to be money there.
Right. Well, it was pre the concept of merchandising. He built the whole concept.
I don't know. I really like my Godfather stuffy.
Mm-hmm.
I cuddle with it every night.
I like the plastic gun with the tape on it that you can that came in.
I want one of those.
Yeah.
I hang it behind my toilet all the time.
I was going to say, it's still wet from toilet water. It comes in a little bag.
But yeah, Star Wars itself was very nearly a failure right out of the gate. And it got saved by several key people, none of whom are George Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
Most notably, it was notorious for being saved in editing by George Lucas's then wife, who took what was a mess of a film and found the narrative.
Right.
So she deserves all due credit and all due divorce settlement for saving that. But also people like John Williams, who I don't think there's ever been a film in cinema history that more relies on its score than the original Star Wars film.
What about the artist?
Silent films notwithstanding, yeah. Even then, I think most silent films are better appreciated without the damn music.
Indeed.
Yes, John Williams did an extraordinary job of basically leading everyone by the nose through the narrative and telling them, this is how you're supposed to feel here, this is how when you're supposed to be excited, because a lot of the original film is people skulking around the desert and on space stations,
right,
trying not to be noticed.
Hey, it's a national pastime.
And then following that, there was a very valiant attempt to shoot itself in the foot as far as the Star Wars franchise went with the 1978 holiday special, which I will revisit shortly.
Because you love your, I want to say, San Francisco Union commercials?
Oh, yes, no, certainly anyone who's ever watched the bootlegs that still exist of this thing, they all have the unified opinion that the 1970s commercials are far superior than anything in the actual 2-hour-long holiday special, which is probably remains the single worst 2 hours ever produced for television. It is,
and yet it's
torture to sit through.
2 hours that's better than any of the 3 new movies.
Yeah, I would certainly. I don't know if I'd say it's better than any. It's truer to Star Wars than at least The Last Jedi is. Last Jedi does severe damage, but again, we'll get to that. After the grave disappointment of that, and I remember the disappointment that surrounded the holiday special because it was exactly the target demographic at the time. And it was within 10 minutes of turning it on, and everyone was so excited for this thing. It's new Star Wars material with the original cast. 10 minutes in, we're watching that atrocity Wookiee child.
There's a 20-minute opening segment with no dialogue, watching Wookiees pantomime. Yeah,
Wookiees talk, no subtitles, no nothing. And then there's a moment where Lumpy, Chewbacca's son, watches it's sort of a Cirque du Soleil hologram. And even as a 10-year-old, I looked at that and said, what the F is this?
But it had that awesome, weirdly animated Boba Fett sequence.
Yes, everyone likes the Boba Fett sequence.
It's weird, though.
It's weird, yes. It stinks of that era of heavy metal animation.
Same company.
Yeah. It has that Canadian connection as well. This was the much lauded premiere of Boba Fett as a character, and a character who's never meant a damn thing to Star Wars, except everyone thinks, this guy's so cool, except we never see him do anything good or competent.
Nope, he just gets knocked into a murder monster.
Yes.
That's the whole premise with him.
Oh crap, a blind man.
Yeah, that's pretty much Boba Fett's whole existence, is standing around in a cool costume and then getting slapstickily killed off.
So then, of course, after that, Star Wars got saved again because everyone, 1980 was a weird time because now everything's sequel. At the time, though, it was generally the thinking that, well, sequels are never as good as the original. And, of course, we've seen many examples of superb sequels since then.
Like City Slickers 2, The Search for Curly's Gold.
Absolutely. Probably the greatest sequel ever made. I mean,
the truest.
The brilliance of getting Jack Palance to play his own twin brother to explain why he's still in this film. The writing is superlative.
Not since Chow Yun-Fat did it in Better Tomorrow 2 have I been so engrossed with it.
The expectations for Empire Strikes Back were a bit on the low side, actually. And so when it turned out to be the finest example of space opera fantasy filmmaking ever made, and it truly is an exemplar example of the genre. And that was largely due to the, I would say, intervention of one, Lawrence Kasdan working on polishing up that script, and two, the surprisingly effective not casting but hiring of Irwin Kershner as director.
Yep.
To replace George Lucas, who at that point was sort of hitting that point of, I don't really want to direct anymore. So they hired Irwin Kershner, shockingly on the basis of his work on The Eyes of Laura Mars.
Huh.
And
which is a fine film.
But it's trash.
And there's not much sci-fi in it.
No. It is very much, if you're not familiar with this film, it's a Faye Dunaway thriller from the late 70s.
Written by John Carpenter.
Yeah. And it's sort of an American giallo film.
Yeah, very much.
Very much like if Dario Argento were not Italian and he were in America making movies, he would make something like this. It's a watered-down giallo type of film, but it's very much in that trashy, crime, weird fiction cinema.
I'm guessing that the entirety of his CV had little to do with probably, hey, he's willing to work cheap. Much like the Marvel mentality when comes to hiring their quote-unquote A-list directors. Oh, this person will work for scale on our $200 million movie? Great.
Well, when I heard that he was hired specifically because they saw The Eyes of Laura Mars and said, oh, this is our guy, that's baffling to me.
Right.
Because, I've since seen the film, it took me a very long time to finally sit through The Eyes of Laura Mars, and when I did, I was not overwhelmed or indeed even impressed.
There wasn't a single Yoda in that movie.
There was an Odo, though.
Really?
Yeah, he's in it, yeah.
I didn't even remember that.
Yeah. Shockingly that it all worked out, and Star Wars continued forward stronger than ever, with high expectations for the next film, which is where the disappointment began.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back after these very important words from Stitch and Bitch.
Curling, cast on, toxic masculinity,
Stitch and
astrology, bind off, yarn forward. What do all of these terms have in common?
They're bullshit?
They'll all be said during CJLO's Stitch and Bitch.
I don't think toxic masculinity is bullshit. I think it is the groundwork by which our entire society is built, for better and worse.
Be sure to bring your crafty projects and your hot topics. That's the CJLO Stitch and Bitch on February 6th. See you there.
I like that ad. It was hilarious. They brought up toxic masculinity like it was an awesome thing.
And I'm listening to the Live Wire show on CGLO.
Oh, we're back in 5 seconds. It's
really
the shortest ad ever.
All right.
And we're back on CGL 1690 AM. Our show is Cinema Smackdown. Today we are doing a Star Wars autopsy, apparently.
It's kind of like the Alien Autopsy, but less with the rubber aliens.
Oh, I see. Or that Saw 4 autopsy scene.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's pretty gruesome. It's the most gruesome of all the torture porn scenes. And it's just the quiet autopsy.
And it serves to... Hey, remember that main character? Yeah, he's dead, but we're going to continue this series forever.
Forever. Good news, Chris Rock is available. He's our... I don't know if he's the new Jigsaw. We'll find out.
Hey, Tobin Bell got to eat.
Yeah, there you go. Couldn't have been said better. So we had you had just covered the Erwin Kershner weirdness of Empire.
Yeah.
You got for me now?
And then we hit Return of the Jedi, which I saw opening weekend, and it was the first film I ever saw that A, required me to line up 2 hours before the movie began, and B, actually had the entire audience screaming ecstatically with the introduction of every major character. And, they screamed when it began, they screamed when Luke was introduced, they screamed when Leia was introduced, they screamed when everybody was introduced, they screamed at the end when it was all over. I had never seen that sort of enthusiasm for a film. I'd heard of it happening before, but that was my first-person experience with it.
Did it brainwash you into feeling like you'd watched a good movie?
Well, I still enjoy Return of the Jedi. There are people who I find overcritical of it. Considering the disastrous ends of a number of series and trilogies we've seen in recent years, you should thank your lucky stars.
No, it's a miracle compared to almost every other trilogy-ending film, because every other trilogy-ending film just tells you the same story again, whereas at least Return of the Jedi had new information, new ideas, new vehicles, new concepts. It does tighten the bow a little too tight. It is the first film that I ever saw where it just said, for God's sake, just let this end by making all these characters have relationships they didn't have before. We're just going to tie that bow. All right, then. Now we don't have to worry about Luke and Leia being part of the romantic triangle anymore. We don't have to worry about that dangling plot thread of there will be another, which was not something they knew they were going to do with.
Right.
There's all sorts of
character
moments that are...
The entire trilogy does suffer a bit from the, we're kind of pulling elements of this out of our ass as we go along.
Yeah.
Despite everyone thinking Lucas is some great master planner, he isn't.
Right. Oh, God, no. He's horrible about that.
Yeah.
He's on record quoted as saying after the first Star Wars movie, don't worry about whatever you want to do with Darth Vader in the second film. He's a disposable villain. He was going to be Snoked in the second film.
Wow.
That was the original plan. He just, I'll just come up with another major character for them to have to deal with. He didn't think of Star Wars as an epic trilogy or anything of the kind. It was just multiple adventures of these ragtag rogues. That's what he wanted to do. Mike's a little low.
No, yeah, my mic keeps slipping here. One of the great improv moments as far as the plotting this thing out was the whole Luke and Leia brother-sister thing. That was basically a placeholder in the script for the third movie when, during the throne room scene, Luke is facing off Darth Vader, and he's hiding from him at one point, and it's said in the script, and then Vader says something that so infuriates Luke, he starts using the dark side of the Force to defeat him.
Yeah, which doesn't.
And they didn't know what it was. Yeah. They didn't know what could Vader possibly say that will make Luke wig out and attack him. And then, of course, we get the twins, or whatever. He doesn't mention twin sister, but he says, or does he? I can't remember.
It's in the next movie.
Yeah.
It's in
yeah.
Return of the Jedi.
Okay, yeah. No. That's what I'm talking about. That's when it comes up.
Sorry.
The whole there is another twin sister. Yeah. So yeah, they got that across the finish line. I think some Ewok quibbles, and I mean, I don't have a big problem with Ewoks. I do have a problem with the big slapstick fight that defeats the Empire. Because that stuff that's happening on the ground is rubbish. The space battle is great. The Luke in the throne room stuff is great. And then we keep cutting back to wacky Ewoks.
And we've debated this before, but Harrison Ford desperately wanted to be written out of that
film
by being killed off, which I argue that the whole stress of we've lost him, we've found him, he is the linchpin that saves us all and dies in the process, is a phenomenal character arc. Whereas, I know you don't agree, but...
I don't agree for 1983. I agree for now. and things have changed
but Shane,
about.
it's now.
Yeah, things have changed as far as how these characters are handled.
I'm sure you're much more appreciative that they let that character linger for 40 years only to be stabbed in the stomach by his emo goth child.
Again, this plays to what I want to talk about with the list of suspects.
Uh-huh.
So, we'll start with the rapid demise because, it took 16 years for Lucas to say, you know what, fine, I'll get around to making those first 3 movies in the since I made the egregious error of numbering these films and starting with 4.
Right.
I will now make 1, 2, 3, and fans collectively said these aren't very good. Now, there's a whole generation of people who grew up with that era of Star Wars who like it just fine. Mm-hmm. But anyone who grew up with the original Star Wars said, yeah, this just seems like a cash grab, and they are horrible, and it takes 2 wasted films to finally get to the plot line, mm-hmm. and then they rush through the plot elements that we know have to happen in Part 3. It's a bit of a wreck. Mind you, videos that came out about it, particularly the Harry Plinkett reviews, the epic feature-length reviews about why those films are so terrible, are so much better than the films themselves.
Yeah, they almost make me happy the movies exist.
Exactly. Disappointing as they are.
Them properly. The Red Letter Media, Harry Plinkett dissections of the Star Wars prequels are excellent.
Yes. Notably, he had been doing those for the Next Generation Star Trek movies before that, but it was when he did The Phantom Menace that they hit it big. Mm-hmm. And suddenly they're quite the darlings of the social media sect.
Yep, and as soon as that happened, I started to hate them, and I despise them now. But I still like those original reviews. They're very entertaining.
And I watch them religiously.
Yep. It just shows the divide between where good taste falls into whatever it is you do. Well, tell us more about the Star Wars Autopsy.
So, George Lucas's first real volley as suspect of who killed Star Wars began in 1997 with a re-release of the original trilogy, which he endlessly tampered with.
Fixed, you mean?
Fixed, yeah. Well, when I say endlessly tampered, even since then there have been multiple more Blu-ray releases of the original trilogy, and every time a new version comes out, someone notices some other damn thing that Lucas fixed.
No, he's done with that. McCluskey. Do you actually know what that reference is?
No.
Oh, look it up.
Okay.
Now when Greedo gets shot, he says something along the lines of McCluskey as he dies.
Oh, right. Yes. No, I do know what this is. Yeah. This is the most recent tampering.
The parting gift he had for them.
Yeah. That.
Let me just extra fix this.
There's a line. The Han doesn't shoot first scene is that one gets tampered with every single edition.
I mean, it's the greatest cinematic choice since all FBI agents must hold walkie-talkies.
Yeah. At least Spielberg released the flip side original cut of that, as opposed to Lucas, who has purposely suppressed the original cut of the Star Wars films. The Oscar-winning, innovative special effects that he'd often just removed wholesale and removed with terrible CG.
Yep. Well, he's like the guy who buys the new HD TV, no matter what it does to your actual viewing experience.
Right.
It's new, it must be better.
And now all my old media looks like crap.
Yep.
Yay. Can't wait for 5G.
Yeah, exactly.
Largely because of the fan backlash, Lucas said, well, okay, fine, screw this, and decided to take Disney's offer and sell Star Wars wholesale to, or rather Lucasfilm in general, because they didn't just buy Star Wars. Disney actually bought the rights to everything else that Lucasfilm had produced over the years, including mostly things that no one gives a crap about, and Indiana Jones.
I mean, I'm very much looking forward to the Howard the Duck Hulu TV show.
I've been waiting for many years for that sequel to Radio Land Murders.
I like Radio Land Murders. Have you actually seen it?
I have not, no.
I actually like it. It's fine. Well, then again, I saw it when it came out, which I want to say was like 96 or something, so Lord knows how that's aged, but I remember it being kind of amusing. I do remember that right before it came out, they took the Lucasfilm brand off it. So someone wasn't too happy with the end results. I know that much.
Tucker and a Man of His Dreams is one of theirs as well, isn't it?
That's a Coppola film.
Is it?
So
I thought Lucasfilm produced it. Anyway,
it's
basically
it's
mostly
dull, so.
mostly stuff that nobody cares about.
Right.
And Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
Right.
But I will say Lucas was not the first suspect on my list of who's killed Star Wars, because you have to go back to that holiday special, that coked up train wreck of a special, and I will pick one person primarily responsible for why that is such a piece of crap.
Is it Anthony Daniels?
No.
You hate him.
Everyone hates Anthony Daniels. Apparently he's a real dick. No, I'm talking of none other than the greatest villain of Hollywood history, Bruce Vilanch.
That's true. He did write that.
He was, if not the sole writer, at least a
He's
primary
one of the
writer on
5 people, but he's the most recognizable.
And given body weight, I think he probably did the most coke. Other than Carrie Fisher, of course.
Right.
Carrie Fisher, who was clearly altered throughout the duration of that special.
She seems great.
To the point where, there is that great scene where she literally bumps into furniture.
Yep.
And they kept that. Mind you, I don't think they were...
best take.
It was their best take, but, given the overall poor quality of the show, I don't think they did many takes.
Very true.
I've worked on shows where it's like, yeah, one take, that's good enough. Yeah, we got it. Move on. Really? You're not shooting another one for safety? Nope. on to the next setup.
We've got lunch soon. Don't you understand?
So yeah, he had a good. He got that first knife in.
Right.
And then Lucas, of course, thoroughly cut its throat, and then sold it to Disney, where the list of suspects increases exponentially almost immediately. Mm-hmm. So we have, of course, Kathleen Kennedy, who...
as I understand it, you think can do no wrong?
Well, she brews a hell of a cup of coffee, I understand, because apparently that was her job for 50 damn years for Spielberg and Lucas, going back to... I mean, her name is on a lot of great films, but as executive producer, which means nothing.
She used to be paired up with Frank Marshall as producer.
Yeah, they are
for
husband.
a really long time.
They are husband and wife. Yeah.
I don't think he works anymore.
Not
I
much.
think his name's gone off.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I've seen. But yeah, and he's a pretty fine director in his own right. He did
Do Alive?
He did Alive, yes, yeah. Which I'm quite fond of. It's the most heartwarming cannibalism movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, that and Ravenous.
Yeah. Only if you promise to clean your plate. That's one of the finest moments in any. When someone asks, hey, if you die, can we eat you? Only if you promise to clean your plate.
Nice. I always enjoy it when you give us a reading.
Yeah.
Who else do you got on your list of suspects?
Well, yeah, so Kathleen Kennedy has caught a lot of heat for being in charge of the Disney-owned Lucasfilm. And going through the motions of hiring and firing directors on every damn Star Wars movie that gets made. It seems like every director who has made a film has been extensively reshot or fired, or, so we had Rogue One, for example, where Tony Gilroy came in to fix that in midstream.
I'll remind our listeners that you are listening to CJLO 6090 AM. Our show is called Cinema Smackdown. Today we're doing a little autopsy on the Star Wars saga, against my will. But it has been amusing so far. So please continue with Tony Gilroy's addition to the Star Wars saga, which I did recently read about in depth, and yeah, he reworked that.
Oh yeah. No,
a bit.
they hired was it Garth Edwards?
Edwards or Evans?
Yeah, there's it's Edwards. Yeah. Evans is the raid guy.
On the strength of his amazing Godzilla movie, or was that in the other order?
Yeah, well, he did Monsters and then did Godzilla, and then they hired him for Rogue One. And that is the most well-received of the Disney Star Wars films, and
With
yet...
good reason.
But it is a mess initially. It's a film that improves as it goes along, but I think that movie is hot garbage right up until the robot shows up. And then the robot's amazing, and he carries you through to the next little bit. And by the time we're in the third act is kind of fantastic.
Yeah. So
and the epilogue.
It's not a bad movie.
Yeah, but, it needed extensive fixing by Gilroy.
Well, whether it needed or not, it got it.
Well, yeah. But what I hear is, yeah, it needed it.
I don't know what you mean. His Godzilla movie is flawless.
The cloven-footed Godzilla, yeah.
No, that is not one of my problems with the Godzilla movie.
That's,
2 entire hours of nothing happening is my problem with that movie.
Oh, the monsters are finally going to fight. Let's cut away. Quick. We don't want to see this. We haven't been waiting 2 hours to see this.
We need to see more scenes of the main character grieving his father, who died for no reason in the middle of the film. Would have been a much more interesting...
Well, he shouldn't have been cooking all that meth.
Very true. Very true. Oh, boy, is this ever an episode where we make a lot of references that explain none of them.
Surely you're enough of a film and television geek, if you're listening to the show, to know.
Anybody who's willing to listen to a Star Wars Autopsy episode had better understand at least a few of the players behind the scenes.
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about, where were we at? You're mentioning Rogue One right now. So the Kathleen Kennedy
indecision fest as far as who's going to be in charge of these films. With one of the only people who have had a stretch on it is, of course, J.J. Abrams, who's another suspect.
Unwillingly. Much like Peter Jackson on the Hobbit films, was forced to come back.
Yeah, but I mean, he got his knife in with The Force Awakens.
Oh, did he ever?
Now, I'm not super duper down on Force Awakens. Some people are. Now, it is derivative mediocre schlock. I'll give you that.
You're being very kind when you use the word mediocre, but okay. I'll allow it.
I'll give you that, but the success or failure of that film really depended on what followed it. Because it is a potentially half-decent launching point to something good. The problem is what followed was an absolute crap fest. The crap fest, of course, beginning with Rian Johnson, I was originally very excited to hear that Rian Johnson was going to be doing the next Star Wars film. I thought that would be a step up.
We all were.
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy who, I was a fan of Brick, I was a fan of Looper. I figured, this guy might do something truly interesting as opposed to J.J. Abrams, who's a bit of a, lens flare hack. And, well, Rian Johnson had a vision. And he wanted to subvert expectations. And my expectations was that The Last Jedi would be a good film. Instead, we got a film that did so much damage to Star Wars, I don't think it can ever truly recover from how subverted the very concept of it was. If you thought George Lucas and his techno-babble explanation for the Force with midichlorians was bad, or Rian Johnson's extension of Force powers and turning Luke Skywalker into a grumpy sad sack and just basic plot elements as well. It's not just that he had his own vision. The structure of the film is terrible. The pacing is terrible. I did rewatch it for a second time in advance of the new film. And I appreciate Last Jedi versus Rise of Skywalker. They're both terrible, terrible movies, but they're terrible films in completely different ways. And I would almost edge out and say, reluctantly, that The Last Jedi is probably a superior film. It's an inferior Star Wars film because it does terrible damage to the franchise. But it does hold together more as a piece of film than this absolute cluster F that is Rise of Skywalker, which starts turned up to 11 and just keeps raising the dial from there as far as noise, busyness, fast cutting, scenes that make no sense, just ideas and stupidity thrown in until it's just this stew of a film that doesn't work.
Oh, don't forget it has payoff after payoff that are not satisfying.
and not to mention that we're trying to wrap up the entire series, where the running time is limited, even though the damn film runs 2.5 hours.
Well, the most important thing that we've learned in these Star Wars movies is that you can use the Force to levitate yourself, to move objects through space and time. You can raise things, even when you're dead, that weigh more than an entire building. But try to make a phone call using a Force line, and you instantly die and become a Force ghost. It's like, just don't Skype with anyone, and you're okay.
Yeah.
It is a really weird sliding scale of, so that's what kills this person. Saying hello from a distance. Happens twice in 2 movies. It is unreal to me. They kill off 2 legacy characters because they try to say hello.
Yeah. Well, actually, that segues into one of my other more unusual suspects, and who killed Star Wars. And I'm going to point a finger at you. Yes, you, Harrison Ford. Now, we all know in the original Star Wars trilogy, Han Solo shot first. Well, he really did shoot first in the new trilogy. And by shooting first, I mean by being the first legacy character at Harrison Ford's insistence, as per usual. I want Han Solo to be dead. Fine, you're dead in this one. And that set the ball rolling to the massacre that is, let's kill all the legacy characters you ever give a crap about.
I mean, you can do it. You just have to do it in a way that isn't...
It needs to mean something.
Your character can't basically go against their own personality and die in the process, which is, as far as I was concerned, what happened to Han Solo. Suddenly, we are shown that he has an entirely new character trait. Being an overprotective dad. Wait, that's not who Han Solo is. Oh, it killed him. Well, thanks for introducing that thing out of nowhere that gives us a completely unsatisfying end to this character.
Right.
And
Followed immediately by Luke Skywalker saying,
not at all Luke
"Oh,
Skywalker.
my friends in the entire galaxy are in terrible, terrible peril. Should I show up?
Yeah.
Nah, I think I'll just phone in an appearance."
Yeah. I don't hate that sequence, but I hate the resolution. I will say that it is always worth mentioning that when this film was written, when Last Jedi was written, Mark Hamill read the script, took a meeting with the director, and specifically said, you can find this quote online, I believe his exact words were, "I fundamentally disagree with every single action my character takes in this story. That said, I am a professional, and I am going to show up to work on Monday and do the job as requested."
Yeah, Mark Hamill, to his credit, started signaling to the audience and the fans that this was not going well right from his glorified cameo in The Force Awakens, where he was grousing, "I got into shape for this."
That had more to do with him having to lay off the donuts for a year to only realize I don't have a single line of dialogue and I show up in a cloak.
Yeah,
so you only see the edge of my face.
And doing nothing, just standing there. They could have easily just CG'd his head onto a double.
Well, you mean like in the Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, exactly.
Or they CG his face.
Yep. Yep. A lot of that.
That looks super real though, so I don't know what you're complaining about.
I much preferred Uncanny Valley Peter Cushing from Rogue One.
I did not. That is actually a massive low point in that film for me. It's kind of working, and then there's one shot in Rogue One where faux Peter Cushing is chatting with someone through a window. So you see his reflection, his very vague, clearly CGI'd reflection in a window. And I thought, this is great. I am fine with this representation of the... And he turns around so that he is 100% Uncanny Valley Peter Cushing. And you're like, no. Now the whole movie is basically off its axis for a little while we wait for him to go away. so that we can actually start to feel like the film is happening again. It's a rough moment, you know.
And yet, it made me sad that they'd killed off Christopher Lee's character, because it would have been wonderful to see Christopher Lee acting with CG monster Peter Cushing.
Well, they could have had them both as CG characters by that point.
Yeah. Well, if not for that minor beheading incident in episode 3.
You can choose an. I don't remember at what point any of these things happen in the chronology. So I'll
Doesn't matter. They
throw the two of them together.
They bring back dead characters with robot legs, and all sorts of stupid crap happens in Star Wars these days. So.
Yep. That's why I was really hoping the only way they would have won me back is if the Harrison Ford character had returned in the third film with robot legs. Oh, you didn't die when you fell down.
We got one of Harrison Ford's signature robot performances.
We sure did.
So, the other suspects I should mention to get the complete the complete list of the usual suspects, from the very top to the very bottom. So at the very top we have Bob Iger, who is overseeing this whole mess. And everyone has turned to him and said, so why isn't Kathleen Kennedy fired yet? And instead of firing her, they renewed her contract.
Oh yeah, they're doubling down.
Yeah.
You go tell me what to do.
Well, inside word is possibly that, I mean, they've mentioned, this might have been offered to J.J. Abrams, and as you said, he kind of reluctantly came back to try and stick this landing, because if you want to trust anyone to stick the ending of a series, it's J.J. Abrams. He's proved this. He's so good at this. This is certainly in his wheelhouse.
I mean, everyone loves the last episode of Lost.
Exactly.
Everybody unconditionally loves that ending.
So apparently he's refused position. There's been a few other names that are brought up of people who might be appropriate for it. People like Dave Filoni, who ushered the Clone Wars TV show and Rebels as well, as being probably the premier canon Star Wars geek in charge of anything over Lucasfilm.
So he might be the Kevin Feige.
Yeah, exactly. That he's a guy who knows the lore and understands it and does stuff that the fans like.
I've never seen a single episode of these cartoon shows, so I have no idea if he is highly qualified or another hack.
Yeah, well, I mean, he did also work on The Mandalorian as well, so, you know.
Well, fine.
You've seen that. So,
I have.
Yeah. But nevertheless, Kathleen Kennedy persists and appears to have already handpicked her successor, who is a like-minded, the Force is female type of. If you don't know what that is, that's Kathleen Kennedy and various women in her immediate staff pose with the Force is female T-shirts to sort of announce this is what our agenda will be. And so, as a result, we got probably the working definition of what a Mary Sue character is in the form of Rey.
Very true.
On the bright side, if anyone ever asks you, I don't really understand what Mary Sue is. Can you give me an example?
Watch Force Awakens.
Just watch the entire trilogy. Rey is the ultimate example of this
in the Force
extremely poor characterization, which is a pity because I think the cast all had potential, but they just did not have the material to work with.
All right, well, we'll be back with more of this fascinating Star Wars Autopsy after these messages.
Looking for your next step in education or to travel? Learn about undergraduate and postgraduate programs, professional degrees and doctorates, as well as work abroad.
Well, you certainly had a structure, so good on you.
At the Study You Go Abroad Fair on Saturday, February 29th.
I'm just
at
here
the Paladin Museum in Montreal. Admission is free.
I want to say
Check the
Abbott
web for
you.
more
Is it
information.
Abbott who's the straight man?
Yeah, yeah.
You gave me, what was it? You gave me Hastings? Is that it?
Oh, yeah. Hastings to my Poirot.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that Agatha Christie?
Yeah.
I am not.
Although Poirot had a number of regular Watson-type characters.
Montreal's #1 source for reggae music and only party on radio.
Ooh. Alright, you're back on CGL 1690 AM. Our show is Cinema Smackdown. I'm Michael Brodie. I'm joined by Shane Simmons, and Shane is regaling us with his thoughts on Who Killed Star Wars.
Yeah, and I was just giving Bob Iger as the last guy in charge type suspect, because he is overseeing this, and it is the branch of Disney that is not doing so well. The Galaxy's Edge amusement park feature of Disney also flopped. There's been a lot of money left on the table. There's a terrible rebellion, basically, against most of the Star Wars material that Disney has produced, which leads us to the last suspect, which is ultimately the great patsy of this entire endeavor. Because all the people in charge of actually making the decisions that have damaged the brand, possibly beyond repair, they all point to this suspect. You're the one responsible. And that is, of course, what is collectively known as the fandom menace. These are the people who are most vocal about, this is crap and we don't like it.
I mean, they fixed it by removing, what is her name? Kelly Sue?
Oh, Kelly Marie Tran?
Kelly Marie Tran. I mean, they literally Jar Jar Binks'd her of the third film.
Yeah,
by their collective aggravation, anger, whatever it is. I mean, there's nothing quite like taking a segment that people don't think works in a movie, and then rather than trying to massage it into something that functions, just omitting it in the next film, which makes it even more glaring.
Yeah, well, apparently there is a lot more material that was shot with her, but there's probably a lot more material that was shot with everybody in Rise of Skywalker, and that they went through many, many cuts of that film and test screened a bunch of them. There was a Kathleen Kennedy cut, there was a Bob Iger cut, and there was a J.J. Abrams / George Lucas cut, because apparently J.J. brought George in and asked him, can you help me decide what to put in this final piece of crap?
Yeah, and George sat in a corner and just said the word midichlorians like a mantra.
Yeah, well, apparently, J.J. Abrams only being the director and George Lucas only being the creator of Star Wars, their version was rejected wholesale. Mm-hmm. And they went with some Frankenstein monster version. So
it was very important the movie end on a make-out session.
Not to mention, there were original plans. I brought this up with you in conversation last week. What's his face? Adam Smith? Or Matt Smith, former Doctor Who. He was supposed to be the big bad of this. It wasn't supposed to be Palpatine originally.
It is super weird, and people are not expressing enough disbelief at the fact that they resurrect a character off-screen and never explain it or reference it in the film. It's just, oh, hey, that guy's back.
Yeah.
What? What are you talking about?
That space station exploded real good, but this guy survives.
We had enough of his body to zombie resurrect him somehow, because that's a thing we've always done in Star Wars. I don't even understand it, and it's a given. And then at the end,
even the people who like this film don't understand it, because I've heard multiple explanations about why he's back, and previous versions of that we've seen of Palpatine, they were all clones, and this is the real Palpatine, and yet why is he so horribly scarred? Why are his fingers nubbed? He seems to be damaged from the explosion of the Death Star.
There's just no explanation.
I don't care. I don't know, and I don't care. Ultimately, I just kind of throw my hands up and say whatever.
At some point in the script process, there had to be a paragraph where someone says, and here is why this is happening.
Well, in the original script, back when Colin Trevorrow was working on...
Sorry, you must always...
Book of Henry director.
I was just going to say, the great Colin Trevorrow. Actually, I don't have a problem with Colin Trevorrow.
Nor do I.
I can't see how you don't, aren't you the world's biggest hater of his Jurassic World movie?
No, I think it's disposable
it.
Rubbish.
I thought it was,
but it's competently made disposable rubbish.
Yeah, I liked it more than most Jurassic Park movies, and I know that's a whole conversation
that
you'd rather not have right now. But it's his Book of Henry, of course. His magnificent misfire on every imaginable intellectual and emotional level movie.
Yes, that ultimately helped get him fired off the Star Wars trilogy.
I will say this again and again as many times as I can. Everyone should see Book of Henry to understand what not to do in a movie. It is an amazingly accomplished film of almost built entirely of errors.
Yeah,
and it is so well made.
Extraordinarily wrong-headed.
I would say it's actually his best made movie. That's the sad part.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It's a
be.
fascinating failure.
Yep. It is one of the most fascinating films.
Mind you, and again, we're never going to get the whole story of what went on behind the scenes because there's too many people whose career might get damaged if the truth comes out. But Trevorrow's removal from the trilogy may have also been him heading out the door on purpose, because when he found out what was going to be left for him to play with after Rian Johnson screwed everything up in the middle part, apparently he wasn't too happy, and it's like, well, but, I kind of wanted to do stuff with Luke Skywalker, and then you killed him. So, having him as a Force ghost, that's not fun.
I really don't see the problem. They walked back half of Rian Johnson's...
Oh, they tried hard, yes. There's so many F.U. Rian Johnson moments in Rise of Skywalker, it actually gets funny. You can make a drinking game of it. And it's probably the only real amusement you'll derive from this mess of a film. But apparently, originally, there was supposed to be Matt Smith as some villain from the Clone Wars TV show continuity.
I think he was just going to play Doctor Who.
I haven't seen enough of the Clone Wars to really weigh in on who this character was, and the feeling from Disney was this is going to be too fan specific that not enough people are going to know who this guy is or be invested in him as a villain. So let's just bring Palpatine back. Everyone knows who Palpatine is, and Ian McDiarmid's still alive, so let's go.
I will argue, barely. They didn't need any makeup in this film.
But there's a lot of things that ended up in the cutting room floor, including cameos by many of the Jedi cast members from previous films.
Yep.
In fact, Ian McDiarmid and Hayden Christensen were supposed to make a convention appearance together because Hayden Christensen did some work on the film as well, and then Disney called them up and they canceled their appearance 40 minutes before they were supposed to hit the stage when they realized, oh, you know what, we're not using any of the footage we shot with him.
I don't see the problem. They could have still had their little fan moment.
Yeah,
It sounds like a lot of disappointed people probably left that particular event that could have been avoided, is my guess.
Probably, yeah. But this is what happens with a major studio when they have a viable franchise. They start to second guess things to death. We saw that. One of my favorite examples is, of course, the Alien series, where they didn't really know they had a franchise until James Cameron made Aliens in '86. Well after the original Alien film, and they realized, oh my God, there's money to be made here. What should we do for the third film? And they had everybody in Hollywood and their mother write a script for it, and kind of took little bits and pieces of it here and there, cobbled together this thing, and ultimately made a film, a second guess film that nobody liked.
Right.
Again, very competently made film, but nobody likes it.
Right.
Because there's a lot of wrong-headed stuff in it.
Well,
and it's all studio notes.
We're running out of time, but I will just say every single one of those Alien 3 scripts are horror scripts, and they omit the entire emotional, heroic arc of Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, we're just going to revert it back to being a pure horror movie. That's the direction they tried to go in. So it's kind of on them from even the inkling of an idea stage. They didn't want to continue the tone of Aliens for some reason.
Well, if we learned anything is when you buy a $4 billion franchise and you're committed to making an entire trilogy of films, how about you actually write them first?
That's crazy.
As opposed to just pulling them out of your ass as you go along, saying, hey, this guy, I kind of like his work. You do whatever you want with this.
Right.
Go play. And we'll pick up the pieces after.
So, Shane, in summation, what have you got for us? We've got about 2 minutes here.
Well, we have a long list of suspects, and the only ones I am personally willing to exonerate are the Phantom Menace people. I think they're patsies. I think blaming fans for not liking you following up their beloved films with absolute hot garbage. I think that's a bad move. I think it is an economically unfeasible move. And I think, yeah, as we've seen, you end up leaving a lot of money on the table. Because I didn't think we would get to the point where the final film of this 9-film cycle would come out. And the collective opinion was, I don't really care, I'm not looking forward to this, but yeah, I guess I'll go see it just to see how they try and wrap this up. Yeah, well, that's what I went, I was among them. I went to see it on opening day just to see how they would wrap it up. And, you pushed the broken jalopy over the finish line. Congratulations. It kind of feels like you finished the story, but it's a complete mess.
I mean, come on, she buries her lightsabers in the sand at the end. Story over.
I will say that epilogue scene is the only scene with any pacing that breathes. The rest of it is, hurry, 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 cut, cut, cut.
I just didn't even get the point.
Yeah.
I'm done with war because everything is okay now. It's like, what?
Well, no, she built her own lightsaber, and it's yellow, the color of cowardice.
Wow, is that ever a dark note to go out on? But it seems appropriate. Oh dear, we still have a minute and a half to banter past that, but I think you've made your point.
Yeah.
Whatever dark point that was.
So tell us about your trivia show.
I don't know, I feel a little beaten down right now, but I suppose I'll have to rally because I'm going to do a trivia show tonight. Tonight, downtown Montreal on Bishop Street at Grumpy's, I will be hosting live trivia in a little show I call the Best Damn Trivia in Montreal. I do this every Sunday night and every Monday night. Sundays at Grumpy's and Mondays at Four Origins, which is on St. Patrick's Street, below the canal in Montreal. Beautiful bars, both of them, both completely different places, completely different shows, well worth seeing. Again, my show is called The Best Damn Trivia in Montreal. It is very Googleable. You can just type that into the internet and it will give you too much information, so nobody will ever be at a loss to figure out where I'm at. Shane, what about you? What events are you
sell
heading
books! Books and books and books. They're all on Amazon. If you go to Amazon.com and look up Shane Simmons, you will find my author page, of which there are many. I have a new one actually coming out very shortly, which I have a story in the global edition of The Art of Sherlock Holmes, which reprints one of my Sherlock Holmes stories and includes a new painting that will go with it that I have not seen yet. So I'm eager to see this. It's apparently my author copy is in the mail on the way to my house right now.
All right, I hope it works out the good way and not that
Yes,
way.
I might do an unpacking video.
You know, with so much of your writing out there right now, I'm looking forward to your Richard Bachman unveiling when we find out an entire...
Oh yeah, I've been writing under a different pen name this whole
Exactly.
time,
You've
and
got
there's
10
50 other books.
10 other books ready to drop at a moment's notice in one gigantic collection that is revealed to be you and was you all along. That's the fun stuff, I say.
Yeah, my alternate author name, Daniel Steele.
Okay, that's an interesting place to let things go. I'm Michael Brodie. This has been episode 56 of Cinema Smackdown. We will be back next week, perhaps, with some World War I ideas for you. In the meantime, have a great week, and we'll see you... I don't have a catchphrase, so we'll see you next time.
I think the easiest catchphrase is see you next time.
But you don't want that to be your catchphrase, because then it's not very unique.
How are you guys?
Not bad, not bad.
Not bad. Surviving the cold and that.
What's that?
Surviving all that snow that just fell.
Yeah, life's okay.
I get it.
House is a little cold today, but that's life. I think it'll, the temperature went up a little today, so I feel better. Shane, are you being picked up, or are you meeting him somewhere?
I don't know, he hasn't texted me back yet, so...
Well, let's start walking, and he can always pick you up on the way.